What if the most terrifying secrets of World War II were buried beneath a frozen wasteland no one dared to explore? Deep beneath Antarctica's endless ice lies a chilling mystery, one the world has tried to erase, hidden away from history and morality itself. Today, we're opening a door to a dark chapter filled with forbidden knowledge and unimaginable danger. Step carefully, some truths are meant to stay frozen in time. In the early hours of May 2, 1945, Soviet troops stormed the ruins of Berlin. They reached the Führer bunker only to find what was declared to be the charred remains of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. For decades, history accepted this as fact. But hidden behind the Iron Curtain, whispers of a different truth refused to die. In 1946, an American OSS officer named James Hartley filed a classified report. It detailed a captured German U-boat, U-977, which surfaced off the coast of Mar del Plata, Argentina, long after the war had ended. The crew insisted they had been following secret orders to deliver valuable cargo to a port near Ushuaia. The Argentine government, friendly to Nazi defectors, kept the incident quiet. Hartley's report vanished into the archives. The story lay dormant for decades, until a dusty leather journal surfaced in Buenos Aires in 1982. Inside were entries in German, dated 1945 to 1952, written by a man calling himself Herr Wolf, a codename known to be used by Hitler. The handwriting bore uncanny resemblance to Hitler's own, with detailed sketches of a remote Patagonian villa and references to the New Reich of Silence. A deeper investigation followed. Historian Elisa Morano spent years interviewing descendants of German settlers in Bariloche, a small town nestled among Argentina's southern lakes and snowy peaks. "We were raised to avoid questions," one old man said. "But everyone knew there was a special house in the hills. Armed men guarded it for years." Satellite images of the area revealed a secluded compound built in the late 1940s with architecture eerily reminiscent of Bavarian estates. No permits, no government records. Just the ruins of a vast underground structure, now swallowed by forest. Morano discovered that Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, had indeed escaped capture and had been sighted in South America as late as 1961. Could he have helped orchestrate a grand escape plan? Der letzte Pfad or The Last Path. One theory suggests a group of elite SS loyalists formed a covert resistance movement, codenamed Die Spin, the Spider, tasked with preserving the ideology and possibly the man himself. Nazi gold, smuggled through Swiss banks and Vatican corridors, funded a secretive exodus. With forged Red Cross documents, U-boats, and a network of sympathetic diplomats, it said they spirited dozens of high-ranking Nazis to safety, perhaps including their leader. British intelligence declassified a 1947 transcript in which a captured Nazi officer confessed, "The Führer lives in the south. The world believes he is dead. That is how it must be." Skeptics dismiss these accounts as folklore, misdirection, or the fantasies of exiled loyalists. But there are holes in the official story. Soviet autopsy reports on Hitler's corpse were never independently verified. Stalin himself told U.S. officials in 1945 that he believed Hitler had escaped. And in 2009, DNA testing on skull fragments housed in Moscow proved they belonged to a woman under 40, not Hitler. Former CIA operative Robert Emerson came forward in 1994 with a stunning claim. "We had sightings, credible ones, of Hitler in Colombia and Argentina throughout the late 40s. We were told to stand down. Politically, the world needed closure." The documentary presents reenactments of an alleged 1953 CIA memo referring to Subject H being under observation in the Andes, along with grainy surveillance footage of an elderly man with a limp entering a mountain villa surrounded by armed guards. Perhaps most chilling is the testimony of Isabel Cardoso, a now-deceased housemaid who worked at a ranch near Villa La Angostura. In a taped interview from 1977, she claimed, "He never spoke to me, but I heard them call him Mein Führer. Every night he would listen to old records of Wagner and speak to himself in the mirror. I never forgot his eyes, cold and blue like winter." When pressed for further evidence, modern researchers point to the sudden technological leap in South American aviation industries during the 1950s, supposedly fueled by German scientists. They also note the strange clusters of unmarked graves in the region, filled with bones of European men aged 50 to 70, buried between 1950 and 1970. Could the Third Reich have survived in exile? Was Hitler allowed to fade into obscurity, living out his days in a stolen paradise far from the rubble of Berlin? The answers may never be fully known. But the shadow of that possibility continues to haunt historians, intelligence agencies, and those whose families vanished under the Reich. One truth remains. In war, reality is often stranger and darker than fiction. Type next to continue to the next story. In December 1938, the German battleship Schwabenland departed from Hamburg, bearing an elite crew of naval officers, scientists, and SS agents. Their destination, Antarctica. Publicly, the mission was one of scientific exploration. But behind the diplomatic smiles and meteorological equipment was something far more sinister. Operation Icefire, a covert plan to establish a secret Nazi stronghold at the bottom of the world. The Schwabenland reached the frozen continent in January 1939, landing in Queen Maud Land. Over the next 4 weeks, they dropped aluminum swastika flags across hundreds of square kilometers and began surveying an ice-free mountain range later dubbed New Schwabenland. The ship's crew photographed strange thermal anomalies, recorded signs of geothermal vents, and, according to declassified documents discovered decades later, identified large subterranean caverns beneath the glacial crust. Following the war, most of these records were either destroyed or buried deep in the archives of the SS Ahnenerbe, Heinrich Himmler's pseudoscientific occult division. But in 1954, a Soviet spy named Viktor Gurevich defected to the West with copies of a secret German communication dated February 1945. It read, "All remaining prototypes and materials are to be moved to Base 211. Icefire is our last hope. Base 211. The mythical outpost long dismissed as legend among historians. But the sheer persistence of the rumor drew attention. In 1947, the United States launched Operation High Jump, officially a military training mission in Antarctica. But unofficially, whispers suggest Admiral Richard Byrd was sent to locate and neutralize this hidden fortress. During the operation, Byrd's task force encountered unexpected resistance. Planes were lost, equipment failed, and the fleet retreated sooner than planned. In a now-censored radio interview, Byrd said, "The United States must prepare for the possibility of aircraft flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds." These words fueled the Icefire theory for decades. Could Nazi Germany, facing imminent defeat in Europe, have relocated its most advanced technologies, perhaps even its most brilliant minds, to a frozen sanctuary? After all, thousands of German scientists disappeared after the war. Operation Paperclip accounted for many who were brought to the U.S., but not all. Some vanished completely. Recent satellite scans of Queen Maud Land revealed odd, geometric formations beneath the ice, triangular outlines inconsistent with natural formations. These findings matched sketches found in the diary of Otto Kruger, a former Luftwaffe pilot captured in 1946. In his testimony, he described flying over an ice city, where glowing domes emitted blue light and metal discs hovered without wings. While the world rebuilt, rumors flourished. A German U-boat captain imprisoned in Chile confessed in 1950 that he had made a delivery to Antarctica in the final days of the war. "We brought cargo, machines, and men. No names. No questions. They told us we'd helped preserve the future." In the 1970s, a private expedition led by Norwegian adventurer Leif Halvorsen attempted to retrace the 1938 German landing. His team disappeared. Only a single radio message made it out: "There's something under the ice, not made by nature." Halvorsen's body was found 3 months later on a floating ice shelf, eyes frozen wide open, with burns on his chest in a circular pattern. Skeptics claim the evidence is circumstantial. Climate shifts, magnetic anomalies, hallucinations in extreme cold, these are their explanations. But a few brave researchers continue to dig. Dr. Ingrid Messner, a geophysicist and expert on glacial subsurface imaging, published a paper in 2012 suggesting there are at least 3 massive voids beneath Queen Maud Land, each large enough to contain an entire city. When pressured to explain their origin, she merely said, "Nature does not carve right angles." But what would the Nazis have built in such an impossible place? Some speculate it was intended as a last-stand fortress, others claim it was a testing ground for experimental propulsion and weapons. Fringe theorists even suggest Die Glock, the so-called Nazi Bell, a top-secret anti-gravity device, was transported there after being smuggled out of Breslau in the chaos of 1945. Even more provocative are the classified transcripts from a 1965 West German intelligence operation. One agent reported hearing German being spoken through a short-wave radio frequency above the Antarctic Circle. Another file includes blurred aerial photos of a domed structure peeking through the snow, with a long, metallic object protruding from the ice like a buried engine. Whether Operation Icefire was real or merely a confluence of myth, madness, and Cold War paranoia remains a matter of debate. But in the coldest, most desolate corner of Earth, there are places no satellite can fully see and no probe can reach. And in those places, some believe, the ghost of the Third Reich still lingers, frozen in ambition, awaiting a future thaw. Type next to continue to the next story. By mid-1944, the Manhattan Project was in full swing. Hidden in the deserts of New Mexico, some of the world's brightest minds worked feverishly to unlock the power of the atom. The stakes were unprecedented. Who controlled the bomb would likely decide the war's end and shape the post-war world. But amid the secrecy and scientific genius lurked a shadow, a mole embedded deep within the project, one who nearly handed the atomic bomb to Nazi Germany. The man known only as Agent Kronos was an enigma. Born Karl Steiner, a brilliant physicist and SS sympathizer, he had been recruited by the Abwehr in 1939. Fleeing Germany as Allied bombings intensified, he infiltrated the United States under a false identity. His cover was impeccable, a physicist working in top-secret research. Few suspected he was feeding information back to Berlin. The documentary opens with reenactments of Manhattan Project laboratories, the hum of cyclotrons and glowing fission experiments intercut with scenes of a man slipping confidential papers into a briefcase. Steiner's duplicity was not uncovered until 1945, when decrypted intercepted communications, later known as the Venona Papers, hinted at a leak inside Los Alamos. The Germans, desperate and on the brink of collapse, had dispatched a U-boat equipped with special radio telemetry gear to receive Steiner's transmissions off the eastern seaboard. Through a combination of encoded radio bursts and courier drops, Steiner passed key technical details about the bomb's design and the estimated timeline of its completion. Had the Nazis received this intelligence sooner, the balance of the war could have shifted dramatically. The Allies might have faced nuclear attacks on London, Moscow, or Washington, cities unprepared for atomic devastation. One chilling episode reconstructed in the film shows Steiner narrowly evading capture during a raid at a New Mexico safehouse. Thanks to an insider tip, likely from a sympathetic scientist, he escaped just hours before the FBI arrived, vanishing into the American Southwest. What saved the Allies, however, was the bravery of another physicist, Dr. Helen Carmichael. A rising star in nuclear chemistry, Carmichael grew suspicious of an assistant's irregular behavior. She alerted military intelligence and began covertly monitoring laboratory communications. Her efforts led to the discovery of encoded notes in microfilm hidden in mundane laboratory logs. Steiner was finally tracked down in March 1945, hiding near a mining town in Arizona. During interrogation, he revealed fragments of the German plan but maintained the operation was doomed to fail. The Nazi regime was crumbling, and they had no way to assemble or deploy the bomb fast enough. Nevertheless, the damage was severe. Critical delays and increased security protocols slowed the Manhattan Project and nearly jeopardized the Hiroshima mission. Historians interviewed in the documentary emphasized the butterfly effect of Steiner's espionage. The possibility that the war could have ended differently, with a German atomic bomb unleashed on Allied cities, remains a terrifying counterfactual. The story grows more complex with the appearance of Operation Uberfall, a failed German sabotage plan involving sleeper agents in the U.S. These agents attempted to assassinate key Manhattan Project leaders, including Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves, in coordinated attacks across multiple states. Though foiled by the FBI, these attempts exposed vulnerabilities within America's top-secret program. To this day, declassified documents from British MI6 reveal the close cooperation between Allied intelligence agencies in rooting out Nazi spies. One memo bluntly states, "The Manhattan Project security is the linchpin of Allied victory." In the years after the war, Steiner's fate remains a mystery. Some claim he was quietly executed, others believe he was recruited by U.S. intelligence to work on Cold War projects under witness protection. What is certain is that his actions underscored the razor's edge on which the fate of humanity balanced. The documentary closes with reflections from physicists who worked at Los Alamos, emphasizing the moral weight of their creation and the peril they narrowly avoided. The atomic bomb became a symbol not just of destructive power but of fragile trust in the face of espionage and deceit. Had Agent Kronos succeeded, history's darkest chapter would have rewritten itself, an apocalypse unleashed not in August 1945, but years earlier, under the swastika's shadow. Type next to continue to the next story. The Battle of Stalingrad is remembered as one of the bloodiest and most decisive confrontations of World War II. Millions of soldiers fought and died in the ruins of that shattered city, but buried beneath the dust and rubble is a secret few have dared to tell. A hidden Romanov heir fought alongside the Red Army, under a forged identity, in a mission cloaked in both patriotism and political intrigue. In 1998, Russian historian Alexander Petrov stumbled upon a leather-bound journal in an abandoned archive in Volgograd. The journal belonged to a soldier named Sergei Ivanov, a name common enough to arouse no suspicion, but what struck Petrov was the detailed and unusual recounting of Ivanov's experiences. Among the entries were cryptic references to the Crown's blood and secret orders delivered by NKVD officers personally appointed by Stalin. Further research uncovered Ivanov's true identity. Grand Duke Alexei Nikolaevich Romanov, thought to have been executed with his family by the Bolsheviks in 1918. The theory that he survived and lived in secret had long been dismissed as royalist fantasy. But new forensic facial recognition, comparing Ivanov's wartime photographs with archival images of the last Tsar's son, revealed a near-perfect match. According to Petrov's findings, Stalin, fully aware of the symbolic power of a surviving Romanov, arranged for the boy's rescue in 1920. Hidden away in orphanages, educated under aliases, Alexei was trained for one purpose: to serve as a living emblem of Soviet resilience, infiltrating the Red Army as a soldier who could inspire the masses and confuse foreign intelligence. The Battle of Stalingrad became the ultimate test. Ivanov, Alexei, fought fiercely in the 62nd Army, reportedly rallying exhausted troops during moments when morale was at its lowest. Some veterans later claimed that the mysterious Sergei bore an uncanny resemblance to the old royal family and carried himself with a noble dignity unusual for a common soldier. An encrypted file in the Soviet archives, labeled Project Phoenix, details orders from Stalin's inner circle to conceal the true identity of Ivanov at all costs. NKVD officers closely monitored him, and any inquiries about his past were met with intimidation or disappearance. Post-battle, Alexei vanished from official records. Some speculate he was sent to a secret facility in the Ural Mountains for protection. Others believe he was executed to avoid any political fallout after Stalin consolidated power. This documentary weaves together interviews with surviving Stalingrad veterans, secret transcripts from Soviet intelligence, and forensic analysis. One former officer recalls, "He was different, quiet, serious, but when the bullets flew, he was fearless. No one knew where he came from." Western intelligence services reportedly intercepted coded communications referencing a Crown's heir during the battle, but the significance was lost in translation and buried by the fog of war. The story challenges the accepted narrative of the Soviet Union's brutal eradication of the Romanovs and suggests a hidden layer of strategy, where monarchy and communism blurred under the crucible of war. Whether a symbol of hope or a pawn in Stalin's ruthless game, the Lost Tsar's tale adds an enigmatic human face to the horrors of Stalingrad, reminding us that even in the darkest times, history's truths may lie beneath layers of secrecy and sacrifice. Type Next to continue to the next story. The dawn of June 6, 1944, is etched into history as D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy that turned the tide of World War II in Europe. Yet beneath the triumph and sacrifice lies a staggering secret. What if the real invasion didn't take place on the beaches of Normandy at all? What if Normandy was a colossal decoy, and the true assault struck somewhere else entirely? Operation Fortitude, the legendary Allied deception campaign, created a phantom army commanded by the fictional General George Patton, complete with inflatable tanks, fake radio chatter, and dummy airfields. The goal was to convince German intelligence that the invasion would target the Pas-de-Calais region, far from Normandy. But declassified documents and recently uncovered MI6 recordings suggest this ruse was only part of a much larger strategy. Historians have long debated whether the Allies staged a secondary real invasion to distract Nazi forces. A newly unearthed file, titled Operation Silverthorn, hints at a covert amphibious assault along the rugged coast of Norway. According to intercepted German communications, several battalions of paratroopers and commandos were deployed in early June 1944 to secure strategic fjords and sabotage supply lines, actions never acknowledged in official histories. The documentary traces this lost invasion through interviews with surviving Norwegian resistance fighters and British Special Operations Executive (SOE) agents who operated behind enemy lines. One veteran recounts, "We saw Allied soldiers landing in small numbers, striking German communication posts, then disappearing into the mountains. It was chaos for the Nazis. They expected an attack in France." The film also explores the role of ultra-secret electronic warfare. Allied radio operators flooded German radar and signal networks with false intelligence, creating phantom convoys and phantom divisions that kept Nazi commanders guessing. High-ranking German officers later admitted in post-war interrogations that they were convinced the main Allied push would come at Pas-de-Calais. Meanwhile, the Normandy landings themselves served as a bloody spectacle designed to pin German forces in place. The high casualties and brutal fighting were real, but some argue that the assault diverted attention from the less publicized, but strategically vital, northern operations. Newly digitized aerial reconnaissance reveals unusual troop movements in Scandinavia during the period, alongside reports of U-boat activity being rerouted to counter the northern threat. The Allies' ability to coordinate multiple fronts was key to overwhelming German defenses. The Norwegian government, long reluctant to discuss wartime intelligence, has now declassified files acknowledging Allied landings along its coast, though it remains vague on the scale or outcome. Some researchers believe these actions helped prevent reinforcements from moving south, effectively sealing the fate of German forces in France. D-Day deception challenges the conventional narrative of Allied victory, suggesting a complex chess game where history's greatest amphibious assault was part of a multi-layered strategy involving secret invasions and electronic subterfuge. The film ends by reflecting on the human cost of the deception. Thousands of soldiers who fought in Norway are virtually forgotten, their sacrifices overshadowed by the Normandy landings. It asks, how many stories remain buried beneath the grand narratives of war? The truth behind D-Day may forever remain shrouded in secrecy and myth, but this revelation reminds us that even the most celebrated events can hide unseen battles fought in the shadows. The end. As we close this chapter, remember, some secrets are buried for a reason. The shadows beneath Antarctica's ice are not just relics of the past, they are warnings. What horrors lie still, waiting beneath the surface? And are we truly prepared to face the darkness humanity once unleashed? Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again.